Billions of dollars have poured in from federal and local governments to help America's homeless survive the coronavirus pandemic.
And this spending is helping for now. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias examines whether the strategy spurred by the pandemic could be a long-term solution to this chronic U.S. problem.
Doing all that snow and stuff, got on my blanket, but it's warm inside.
Daniel Bowe is among the more than 500,000 people homeless in the U.S. A newspaper vendor, Bowe spends his nights outside, often in freezing temperatures.
I wish I could get a house, but there ain't gonna be no house skipping a jump. You're gonna go through some trials and tribulations, or sign some papers or something like that. They ain't gonna just give it to you.
But in this COVID-19 pandemic, life has improved for some homeless Americans. Fearing that the virus would spread fast in crowded shelters, local governments and nonprofit groups across the country rushed to move the homeless to hotels, where they can isolate and get medical care. 62-year-old Queenie Featherstone qualified in Washington, D.C., which has the country's highest homeless rate per capita.
I have health issues, and I'm hearing impaired. I feel pretty safe. Of the shelters that I have stayed and slept in were not good.
Having folks come and stay at the hotel has made it a lot easier to connect them to resources. We see higher rates of vaccination and better access to permanent housing.
In D.C., local authorities taxed the wealthy to raise $65 million for permanent housing. And thanks to pandemic aid passed by the U.S. Congress, billions of dollars are flowing to help unhoused Americans nationwide.
That includes 70,000 emergency housing vouchers that communities can use to find private apartments on the private market, as well as $5 billion in grants that help communities to build units of housing.
That's a lot, but the need is also big. Between 2019 and 2020, the number of unsheltered individuals increased by 7%, driven by a housing shortage and spiking rents, particularly in cities like Los Angeles.
Housing alone doesn't seem to restore mental stability or get people off of drugs and alcohol. When the outcomes seem so modest, that leads to frustration and more uncertainty as to whether or not you can just keep increasing funding up and up and up.
But housing people first is what President Joe Biden's administration is betting on. That approach has been less costly and more effective, and communities do provide supportive services, says Hotz Cho.
We as taxpayers are spending somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 on many people experiencing homelessness, and the actual solution, which is to provide housing and services, is often no more expensive than $20,000 or $25,000 per person per year, and often even much less than that.
Robert Warren, who heads an advocacy group, has been houseless 3 times in his life. He says lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic should point to a long-term strategy to fight homelessness.
Having to cook, clean, you know what I'm saying, and fend for themselves in some form or fashion. A lot of these folks need to learn that stuff, and the resources there, to engage them has not been there.
For Queenie Featherstone, who recovered from COVID-19 in December, just having a stable room is keeping her outlook brighter.
I'm strong enough to work because that's the right thing to do, to keep a roof over your head. I can be a success story. I'm not on drugs. I'm not alcoholic. I'm not severely mental. It's just I fell on tough times.
Meantime, Featherstone plans to keep making daily rounds to homeless encampments to support less fortunate Americans however she can. Veronica Balderas Iglesias for VOA News, Washington.